Hello, everybody. Woo, look at how smooth it is. Oh, so good. Here
We
we
got it.
go. Okay, yeah, maybe we got it. Maybe it was
We got
smooth.
it.
Uh,
We got it.
Possibly, yeah. I think so. I don't know. Hopefully Chris is watching and he can tell me if it's actually working or not. But hello and welcome to episode 15 of Laughing into the Void. I'm your host, Tom. Co-hosting with me tonight, as always, is the lovely Rosalind Paris. You can also
Hi.
Uh-huh. And you can watch our previous broadcasts on the District Comedy YouTube and Facebook channels or listen to them on most podcast platforms. If you enjoy the stream, please consider making a donation of any size at district-comedy.live. And if you want to keep up with us on social media, check out the link in the description. And yeah, let's get started. Here today with us, we have Ed. It's pronounced Smythe.
Smyth, yeah,
Smythe, awesome. Ed Smythe
sure.
is a unique comic who serves up an absurdist and silly string of brain twisty people and things such as Mobot, the comedy robot, Bronco Brad, the crooning cowboy, Oog son of Og, 30,000 BC, and more. He performed a week-long show at the Rochester Virtual Fringe Festival in 2020 and has been a regular at the Finger Lakes Comedy Festival since 2016. He also produces his own feature show, Greek Comedy Hour, in performance spaces throughout the Northeast, along with a virtual weekly Bronco Brad Dang Tootin' Good Time show. He can perform for any age audiences with adult friendly ingredients and a family friendly language. You can find out more about him by following on Facebook at Ed underscore Smith underscore comedy. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Or his website, edsmythecomedy.com.
Yep.
And for
Wow.
those of you who are listening to the podcast, it's SMYTH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roz.
I
Boy,
guess, yeah, I guess that's a
every
good point.
time I
Don't
do a
watch
mic
into
or a
it.
show, I have to keep correcting. Well, not correcting folks. Instructing them how to say it correctly.
like, only with Smythe, not Oog son of Og. Oog doesn't have like an
I did have a
umlaut
host
over one of the
yesterday
O's.
ask how to pronounce dog, so we're having troubles in that front too.
I appreciate, though, that he cared enough to ask. He was like, I want to respect the character's name. I'm on board with that, actually.
That is a committed host, I will say.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, now that I've interrupted Tom's
no.
beautifully
It's
crafted
not
intro.
interrupting. We are having an organic conversation. However,
Sure.
if we're gonna start, we do start
Sure.
the same way every episode, which is we're gonna ask you, how would you describe your sense of humor to someone who has never seen you perform?
Well, I'm not sure how you might characterize that because sense of humor can mean way someone characterizes things they think are funny and things that they don't quite find humor in.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's humor and comedy is all about a good comedy is all about something that's thought out. And as long as it's thought out, it really doesn't matter what it is. I'm pretty flexible. I enjoy a lot of different types of humor. Sometimes I don't quite have the same kind of laughs as others, but if it's more thought out or and it's witty, that's stuff that I enjoy. So I certainly can provide examples, but
Right.
and it's tough because even when I thought about trying to characterize what I do, and you call it alt comedy, and it's not really alternative that it's really out there, but rather it's different from the standard observational stand-up stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe part of it is just like the context of the kind of comedy I've been consuming.
Yeah.
Um, you are the only comic, at least on the TB and J mic so far, that has attempted to do a character, which I think is
Oh,
admirable, and kudos to you.
oh well, thank you. And you
Yeah,
know
I
what,
mean,
Tom? It's go ahead, Roz.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of cool because you're the first person on this show too who's been committed to characters, and
Oh,
I feel like it's in modern comedy. Like I feel like maybe it's a little bit of a retro style, but
it could
something
be.
modern comedy could probably learn from a little bit more. You,
Well,
you know,
I appreciate the way you folks are framing it. I don't even think of it as character, but rather just a caricature. That is, the intent is just to create that comic tension and make people laugh. There's really no acting style behind it. In other words, there's no Stanislavski method. I haven't invented a past.
What? Oh god, trying to be caveman Oog method version.
Well, Oog can't be the past because things didn't exist before him. So
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Well, the only thing is that, with like Oog is then for the introductions to make up the backstory. I used to start off that let's welcome a recently freed from a melting glacier, and then a pause. Thank you, ExxonMobil. But it never got a laugh. I think people get too sensitive about the environmental issues.
I
That's
think that's great.
one. That's a funny joke. Two. This is the point of the podcast where I talk about my Encino Man tattoo.
Oh, okay, terrific.
You have to
Of
lift a little bit
unfrozen
higher for the
cavemen.
square.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
So I get behind that.
but so what I'm hearing is that like you kind of go for the more like wittier, well thought out
Yeah.
sense of humor, I guess maybe when you're
Sure.
consuming, and then obviously your
Yeah.
style, it has that in there. Like there's definitely layers to your comedy, but it's
Yeah.
definitely like the focal point is around kind of these characters.
Yeah, in both cases, where you mentioned about Bronco Brad and Doug Son of Og is it's really just kind of more of an outgrowth of just doing just fast little bits with some type of characterization.
Mhm.
For example, you look at what Robin Williams used to do them every 5 to 20 seconds, some strange
Mhm.
voice or some strange person. And it was the same idea that I've done in past in the stand-up. It was just a matter of expanding and extrapolating on that and just building on it. So to create something that you can sustain over a number of minutes.
Right, which you had to do for the what was it, the week-long show for Rochester Virtual
Yeah, yeah,
Fringe.
yeah.
You want to talk a
With
little bit
Bronco,
about that?
oh sure. Well, with the Bronco Brad, is I had to make up a little bit of I wanted to compose a backstory to figure out then how to create that comic tension. So the idea is that Bronco Brad was the crooning cowboy, and I thought, well, that would be great then if he's has a weekly show like a kid show, although it's all tongue in cheek, it's not real. But I just then composed it so Bronco Brad has a Thursday afternoon show right after school on fictional station WEXL in Elmira, New York. So then the comic tension built up there is that Bronco Brett is just singing these really obtuse songs about Polish satellites and the Velcro Kid, and then making art contest with a flying kielbasa. So after a while, the idea is then the people start recognizing that, wait a minute, this guy is serious.
Yeah, so it kind of like
Yeah,
builds over time.
right, exactly.
Cool.
It's kind of cool to think about. Like, it seems like some of the characters you pull from are kind of like those like pulpy, like kind of novel comic book type concepts, like robots and cavemen and stuff. And
Yeah, that's a
I
good
just think
way to
like,
put it, Roz.
yeah, like that like Tom and I come from like an improv background. Like we were in the same improv
Okay.
group for up to 8 years. And whenever I went to a character, I just kind of thought of like one of those like broad like tropes, like
Right.
like the
Tropes.
popular
Yeah.
cheerleader kind of
Yeah,
thing.
like an archetype.
Yeah. The good way
Yeah.
the way I think about it then in that kind of approach is considering what John Cleese used to discuss, how the Monty Python built their success is, if you're going to do absurdist comedy, you have to build a framework that people can recognize in their mind's eye. So you build those three walls of something that's familiar or common, and then you make a twist inside that box to create that absurdity. That creates the comic tension, and then the release as you're watching it as a viewer, you can't quite reconcile the framework you recognize to the absurdity that's being put in there. So like the Monty Python sketch, the committee for putting things on top of other things is a great example of
Yeah.
that. It's a drawing room with old guys puffing cigars and doing some type of old boy social club chit chatter. And it gets out that they're discussing their latest activities of how many things they put on top of other things. And so that's the absurdity that's built in.
Yeah. Or I liked their take on with the Crimson Permanent Insurance skit, with their take on corporate mergers turning into a pirate battle between two buildings.
I don't watch a lot of Monty Python, so I'm not sure.
But yeah.
Right. So yeah, because complete absurdity isn't necessarily funny. Certainly not on a gut level.
Yeah, yeah, and it's that like recognizable framework, I think, that is like the audience
Right.
is like, okay, this is weird, but I can follow, and then
Right. Right.
that's how you like
Right.
reel
So
them in a little bit to get them on your
yeah,
side.
you got it, Roz. Right. So, that was the idea of just thinking that through is that, okay, so, actually, the origin of Oog came out was when I was doing stand up a few years back. I started just developing a bit called The Dawn of Comedy 30,000 BC. And the idea was just there's so many people out there doing dating jokes and other trope jokes. So it was the idea of coming out like kind of hunchback and going, uh, dating scene, it crazy, me no like, airline food,
Yeah.
tuh, tuh, me no like.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of
And the,
well, I mean, it almost sounds like too you guys are kind of talking about like two different ways of achieving the same goal, where Roz, you kind of mentioned like having like archetypes like the cheerleader as a way to kind of have that recognition immediately and have the kind of exposition that you would normally need in a scene that you're improvising, and then you're kind of going, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you can kind of like grab a genre like old western or caveman Flintstones esque to
yeah,
kind of do the same thing.
yeah, and I've tried other silly things. That had, I just wasn't sure if how much I could keep them going. I've had Henny the Swede,
I have not seen
but
that one.
but right. Well, the challenge is that it feels a little limiting, and I'm concerned that people will draw inferences that it's like Andy Kaufman, and that's
Mm,
not my intent at all. And then
gotcha.
I haven't done in a long while since the pandemic. I used to try doing Sammy Schlemiel, the Bible Belt comedian. So, Sammy Schlemiel comes out in the typical Borscht Belt old time comic with the big bow tie and the big glasses, and he's doing riffs about, hey, I was hanging out with Moses the other day, and he kept separating the seas. I said, hey, what am I going to bring my bathing suit for? Hey, bada bing, hey, hallelujah,
Yeah,
amen.
right.
That's awesome.
But again, I think that it was. I don't know if people got the biblical references, and so I thought it was kind of a limiting approach that it just wasn't getting the gut laughs.
Yeah, sometimes it's weird to see what a like with what an audience will connect with sometimes, because I feel like, it's so specific to the audience. Something will kill with one group of people, and
Right.
then you're in another context and it's like crickets. Like, doing corporate shows, like for people in front of their boss, they're gonna
Hmm.
laugh at certain things
Right.
that they feel comfortable at. But if you're in with the
Sure.
same crowd in a bar context with them all drinking, anything's fair game. It's just kind of, it's weird to think of how like those like targeted topics
Genres, yeah,
kind
can
of,
hit or miss depending on the crowd.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
Oh yeah. If you, I know that for anyone being successful in this business, if you develop a unique personality and a recognizable, unique approach, then that's the whole core, the nugget of developing your own audience, your own
yeah.
yeah.
fans.
And
Yeah.
hopefully you're not
You're
like
not just
hitting
you're
too
not out there
close.
delivering spiel. I'm learning that belonging to a gig salad is it's not really working out because you know what I mean by gig salad.
No, actually, I don't think I've heard that term before.
Oh, it's an online resource where once you set yourself up, that people search for entertainers, and if they like,
Oh.
and if they're looking to fill in an event or a venue, is they'll submit a request, and then people who are like myself or
Mhm.
yourself as an entertainer, you can respond to the request. So they're very typical. They're birthday parties, Christmas parties, holiday parties, senior center events.
I feel
And so
like the
they're
equivalent
going,
we
we
had
want a
was
comic.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
We want some, yeah, exactly. So that's a, it could be anybody. They're just looking to blow off steam with laughs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the equivalent we had back in the day was Dragon Up Connects. That's what that site kind of reminds me of, as
Oh
far
yeah.
as like a
Okay.
casting postings
Yeah.
forum. Um,
So I've done a couple. I did a library in central New York that hosted a summer series, and that was okay. It was fun.
Yeah.
Then I got hired by I'm saying not the Lions Club, a fraternal organization, and for like their annual event. And so I kept asking. I said, "Did you see the videotape? Are you okay with what I do?" And I get the assurance, "Oh yeah, it'll be great. It's fine." No, it wasn't fine.
yeah,
And then at that point, you're like, well, I'm on stage.
Yeah, that one I had to work through. The review back to me was too cerebral for kids, too silly for adults.
ha, wow, uh, that's a little
Okay.
harsh. Um, but yeah, I guess
But I got paid.
yeah, at the end of the
There,
day, that's what matters. And I mean,
Well, it would be
you
nice.
had like actual clips that they could refer to, so I don't think you can
Oh
be
yeah, yeah. Well, that's
any
just
more
it.
clear
Yeah,
with
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
expectations than
it's
that.
like fair warning is like, okay, you know what I do. You're good with that. And I got the assurances. Oh yeah, you'll be great. You'll be great. It'll be fine. Well, it was fine to him, the guy who hired me.
yeah, as long as he enjoyed it,
Well, he paid me, yeah. So yeah, but I don't
As
think
long
I
as
got
he
hired
enjoyed
back.
it, yeah,
and the check cleared. The
yeah.
check
So
cleared.
right. So what I do find is interesting is the best venues that I enjoy and that really develop a nice rapport are tend to be first of all if it's like an open mic, then for venues that have complete open performers, that is musicians, poets, storytellers.
Hmm.
Music open mics actually are pretty fun because I think musicians uh, can are more relaxed and patient.
Hmm.
You don't have to do
Yeah.
this one liner, two liner shtick. They're willing to follow you wherever you go because musicians will obviously you do a song and someone listens to you for a couple of minutes to understand your lyrics or your sound. Same idea,
Well, I think the audience can sometimes be a little bit more patient with musicians too. Like they know that
right?
there's a natural rhythm and a pace to the music,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
because of that, they're kind of more inclined to like let the song happen and trust that there'll
right,
be a rhyme
right.
or a quip or something in there to kind of hook them back in.
Yeah, and in the same context is that then they're willing to be more patient and open minded when I'm doing my thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so Roz, you already got into a little bit with the improv background. Um, both tonight and on previous episodes, you've kind of said about how kind of immersing yourself into the scene was a way for you to get around a little bit of the, I guess, tension with the audience. Um,
Horrible, crippling social anxiety, Tom.
yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of wondering, like, do you feel that way with your characters when you perform? Is it a way for you to kind of like protect yourself, or do you feel like, putting out a character kind of makes you especially vulnerable?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're talking to Ross. I wonder if I want to know what Ross feels about it. Hey, well, it's like any stand-up bit you're doing. You have to commit yourself to it. I suppose I was thinking about that today and thought, well, it's really does wash out both directions. In one sense, is once you make a commitment, there ain't no bailing out. Because if you bail out, the audience knows is, oh, he's faking it. On the other hand, is you don't have to excuse it. You're free to do whatever you want because now you're in the zone.
Yeah.
So as long, like I think like for example with like it's actually liberating for Og not to be able to articulate. So he can have a good time just pretending to do something goofy, and there's no joke that has to be written about it. He just has to be his usual self to sell it. With
Yeah.
the thing with Bronco Bread, it takes there's hit or miss. You know, Bronco Bread has written songs that it doesn't seem the audience is really getting into, which is why he only writes songs that last roughly about 50 seconds.
There you go. There you go. There's the trick.
And that's exactly what happens. It finishes a song, there's no response, and moves on to something else. I also, too, I really enjoy this with other performers. And of course, this is critical for anyone who's performing. So I think of it myself as the first rule is you got to make yourself laugh. And if you're enjoying what you're doing, that intangible of showing that you're enjoying what you're doing uh, sends that energy to the audience. And so even if they're not buying it, they're at least satisfied that you're onto something, even if they're not really interested. In other words, if I'm a great sushi bar chef and I'm doing my thing, you maybe not be really into sushi, but you can certainly admire what I'm doing with flipping knives and spatulas. Someone shared an anecdote one time about what George Carlin said, so I'll attribute it to him. But if he did say it, that a successful comedian is like a good taxi driver. The audience will go for the ride as long as they know you know where you're going.
Yeah,
point.
I mean, that's pretty astute, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
So the worst thing that can happen with a performer, and of course with open mics, you see this all the time, is someone getting visibly and verbally upset or frustrated, going, well, I guess that didn't work out. And so, and when they do that, I go, oh my God, because what you're doing is you're insulting the audience. Is they didn't find it funny. So move on. In fact, really good performers recognize that, and they can make a joke of themselves purposely on how it didn't work. Johnny Carson used to milk that to so much success.
Yeah.
He would tell terrible jokes and the audience would groan. And then of course he would wallow in his awkwardness, which would make the audience laugh even more. And that was the whole shtick.
There's an entire comedy troupe, The Kids in the Hall, named after Carson, wiggling out of jokes that didn't hit. You always
Yeah.
blame them on the writers in the hall, the kids in the hall.
So that's the principle is having that wink in your eye that you're demonstrating you're having a good time, even if someone doesn't quite buy into what you're doing.
Yeah.
They know that you're doing something good.
So is that kind of where maybe the vulnerability would come into play, is if it's like, oh, they didn't laugh at that, and I'm doing things that I really think are funny and I really like.
Well, Tom, you must experience that yourself. It's one of those things is, on one hand, you work on something you're proud of and it just does not fly. And on the other hand, you come up with something off the cuff and it's getting belly laughs. That happens.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some strong moments that just happen in the midst of it, and reacting and riffing to your own stuff based on how
Maybe
the audience is
another
accepting
analogy
it.
is like being a good baseball pitcher, and you have a repertoire of pitches: a slider, curveball, fastball, changeup. When you're on, it's working, and you're pitching a shutout. But baseball pitchers struggle. But good pitchers know how to get through their struggling moments. If their fastball isn't working, they just keep working their changeup and their slider. And it's the same idea with a good comedian: is you're doing something and the audience isn't laughing, you don't it doesn't reflect badly on you. You got to just figure out what to do with your other things that you've got. That's all.
Yeah.
And in an open mic, a situation that's hard to do because it's only 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't have much opportunity to
Yeah.
shift gears. But if you're doing a regular performance, you got to shift off and just kind of work through what you've got. I've seen comedians, of course, they do crowd work, and that's always the usual standby when your regular material isn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you
I
don't
can't
really
do
have a
crowd work.
choice. I mean, my partner. Here comes the part of the show where I inevitably talk about my partner's bar.
Okay.
But my partner owns a bar here in Baltimore, and Monday night is open mic night. And Mike Moran, friend of the show, we have him on as an interviewee and as a guest co-host. He he's a very funny comedian, very dry observational type humor. Um,
Okay.
but there was one night I saw him get forced into doing crowd work.
Uh,
Uh, this guy wandered off the street and was standing in the back of the room and was just loudly asking Mike, while Mike was mid stand-up set, if he could buy some acid off of him. And
Oh wow.
Mike was probably the most normal looking person there, who's also been sober for 10, 11, 12 years, and not a crowd work type comedian. So he got forced into kind of like switching it up unexpectedly. And so, he did a great job, but it just kind of makes me think,
uh,
like, sometimes a situation makes you pull something else out. You gotta
oh,
be
yeah.
flexible like that.
Yeah, and that's typical of a comedy club situation. So if people that are really good at it, of course, that's what makes them a success.
Yeah.
You don't you hardly remember any material they did. If you're really committed to your act and you don't do crowd work, well, then you got to be strong enough. I remember watching Gilbert Gottfried decades ago, and nobody was laughing at it. It was really a conservative crowd. So he just started doing this and going, maybe I should do some jokes about cats and dogs. Difference between cats and dogs. And you'll all be driving home like this because you all have giant steering wheels. And you'll be going, that guy was really funny. He's got a good point. There is a difference between cats and dogs.
Right. Yeah.
So, for us, for the few of us that are digging Gilbert, it's like, this is great. He's mocking the audience.
Yeah.
I think we actually saw him. Tom, you were there, right?
Yeah,
For
I
what-
was there. We had a
Yeah,
little
so
annual tradition.
yeah, our improv troupe, we all went to go see him together. And I think
Uh,
the funniest and most memorable bit he did all night was about his favorite compartment of the refrigerator. And it freaking killed. Like, it killed. And he was just
yeah,
talking about the butter compartment being his favorite part of the refrigerator. And
right.
people were just like wiping tears from their eyes. I talk about it all the time. And it's just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it goes to show you, you never know what the audience is going to like.
Yeah, and kind of goes back to the point
Well,
of like whatever it
that's
is,
a,
as long as you
yeah.
commit to
And
it, it can be the
right.
favorite
Yeah.
butter refrigerator compartment.
Well, that's always one of Gilbert's talents, is just taking just silly or stupid mundane things and just keep beating it and beating it and stretching it and beating it, and and you're laughing at the absurdity of this topic and his way of doing it.
Yeah, it was good.
So you don't it sounds like you don't have any like formal background in theater or improv, or you do?
Oh, no, not really. I started off decades ago. I was just having fun for a couple of years with a sketch group, but we
Oh,
broke
cool.
up, and then I was just doing stand up on my own. I love doing the sketch work stuff, the ensemble stuff. It's so much fun. It's great, but it's just like being in a band. People don't get along. Their schedules don't mesh. They get testy with each other. They break up.
I wouldn't
So
know
stand up
anything about
becomes
that.
a much more, yeah, stand up becomes a much more easier channel to focus on your career.
Yeah.
But I've done, I've taken a little bit of nuggets of time off where I've done some Shakespeare plays. And that
Oh,
was fun because it gives a chance to kind of stretch the wings a different way and become more disciplined in some parts of being on stage and then delivering to audiences.
Well, and also having to sort of take that same commitment with somebody else's material seems like a unique layer and a unique challenge that way that may also kind of relate to what you
I
do with the stand up on the reg.
Yeah, I suppose. But I only do a Shakespeare comedy. Although in my bucket list, do want to do one day be in the chorus of Henry V. Remember that?
Okay.
The guy opens up the Oh
For a Muse
for
of
a
Fire. Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah yeah. That's
That's
on
a
my bucket list.
classic. That's a classic. Yeah, that'd be a fun one to do. Maybe that could be a character for the next stand-up that you do. Is coming in as the chorus for Henry V. Just a bunch of finger puppets coming in.
It's funny about doing that is puppets. You can live or die on that. I've tried that in different ways. Like I used to do um, what are you? Yeah, ancient Rome sock puppet theater. But it just didn't gel. You do it in a comedy club, and you are getting nowhere with the audience with that. They're just confused or benignly amused and going, "What?"
How do you find you're able to kind of experiment more with these virtual open mics than you would be able to in the real life open mics?
Yes, yes. Because what one absolute virtue of Zoom mics you can't get in comedy clubs is that you can utilize the frame that you can't do with a real audience. Look like Wally. Hey Wally, what's going on? Hi everybody. Hi Ros. Hi Tom. Hey Wally. Hi everybody. See, now Wally can gonna just sneak in and you see it peeking in. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the one fun thing is you can use the framework, right, Wally? You better believe it, right, Tom?
Right. And that's kind of because when I don't have a reference or context for doing the real life mics, are you able to like haul all of your costumes and your props that we see on like the TBNJ open mic to the various like nightclubs?
Yes, I have a go bag.
Oh.
Sometimes I have several go bags, but it just gets really silly, and I've often chastised myself. But I really love doing the visual stuff, and so every time I write a bit and I think, oh, the clever little visual thing, and I'm going, no, 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 that's just another prop. So I really do try to think about how I can get away with doing something without a visual thingy to go along with it.
Yeah.
Have
I'll
you ever
gotta go
gotten
with you.
pulled over on your way to a gig and the cops
No.
have searched your go bag to see what's in it,
Oh,
and they
no.
just find like wigs and makeup and stuff?
No, because it's small. Like I'll show you here. I'll show you. See?
Go through that bag though is like, I'm just headed to work.
I swear it's not drugs,
If you have
officer.
if you have a VHS camera that you don't use anymore, you can use the VHS bag. The VHS bag is
Oh,
very handy. So you got things like you get a spare Wally.
Oh
You
my
can
spare
shove
Wally.
god.
it
Oh,
in,
is he okay? That one looks
and
a
a
little rough.
spare box of crayons and a spare rock.
Oh my god.
And then it's got little pockets so you can do fun things with balloons.
There you
And
go.
then a little pocket here. You got hey, and what's the other one? Hey, hey ho, yeah.
Hey ho. Okay. All
Right,
right.
right. Yeah. That's when I was doing the Led Zeppelin kazoo. And then on this
Let's.
side pocket here, you got the glasses, and on the other side pocket is a good pocket for the kazoos and the harmonica. Oh, and the feet. Here's another prop that never worked: the little feet. See that? I've tried different things, but it just doesn't work. I can't get anyone to laugh at them.
I love the little
I'm
feet.
walking. Whoops.
Well-
Every day I'm talking. Every day. Yep.
It's interesting because that's also another thing that may kind of change with context. Like, I know that one of the, I mean, it's not like a recent trend anymore, but there was a trend going for a while on TikTok with the tiny hands, and that felt like it
Oh,
was
yeah.
coming up in every single video that was going viral. But so for your style of comedy, do you feel like it has any particular advantages or challenges?
Well, Tom, you've seen a lot of different stand-up, and what you notice now is that most of it is obviously 95+% of comedy, stand-up comedy, is observational.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes the norm, and so I talked about gig salad. That's if you're going to be an observational comedian, you can pick up gigs. Otherwise, you're in a tighter spot. So yeah. What I notice now is when people invite me to showcases or shows, I tend to get the middle spot. I, get- I get the sense that they're going, well, he's not really a headliner, but he's so cute there, little cave guy. We'll put him right there in the middle.
Yeah. Your comedy's middle child.
Yeah, exactly. So I contemplate that and think, well, all right, it's largely because we only do 4 or 5 minute mics. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, I only have time to do one thing. But when I do my geek comedy show or geek comedy hour, I mean, is that what I do is I break that up so that it's a full hour, just broken up with all the various things that I put into it. So it has Bronco Bread, it has Zoog, it has Mobot, it has a couple of my little bonbons in between. So it's a
Yeah.
full hour.
Nice.
And so, what context is Geek Comedy Hour in? Is it
I'm sorry,
like
say that again.
what context is the show in? Like,
Context?
is it a live show that you do pre-pandemic
Oh, I'm
or?
sorry, Roz. I see what you're
Oh,
saying. You'd almost say it was a one-man show, but it really isn't that way. What I do is I at least invite someone else to act as an MC. They can do some opening time and some time in between. So what I'll do is that it's an hour, maybe a little hour plus. So you get the MC host doing his thing, and then of course then I go in and out, or I should say, well, I go in and out, and then somebody else takes my place, whether it's Mobot or Oog or Bronco Bread.
Right, the other characters.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
the
So that's what
rest
I've
of the cast.
been. So that's what we're working on over the past 12 months now with the Zoom mics is just working on all those little 5 minute nuggets of things that I can eventually extrapolate into a part of a bigger show. Well, the Rochester Fringe Festival was an example of that. Is all those little 5 minute Bronco Brad things I could just put together into a half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people have been finding during this time is that it's a good time to kind of reflect and hopefully come out of this with some more material. Um, because I also think about the comedians who have kind of written off doing Zoom mics as kind of beneath them. Now, to me, that's kind of a disadvantage because I've found that it's a really good way to keep the skills sharp.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's definitely an
Well,
opinion that some people have.
yeah, and the irony there, Tom, is that for folks who really do want to commit themselves to a career, that eventually they'll be on TV, and all Zoom mics are or Zoom shows are just a miniature TV show.
Yeah, and I've thought of that point before. It's kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Just, tell jokes on camera to a room full of people who may have heard them before or are also in the industry. It's like that is literally being on like the TV
That is television.
set.
You
But
just bring them
I
in.
think the people I get the sense the folks that struggle or disdain Zoom mics are those that the kind of the personality comics that rely on engaging and kibitzing with the audience.
Well, which is interesting because I am the type of performer where I personally am not a fan. Like, if an audience member talks to me during a show, like I'll talk back, but I won't enjoy
Yeah,
it. And I really do respect
right,
people who are able to do um, like crowd work. But that is something that I have
right,
definitely noticed
right.
is
And
harder to do over Zoom, and maybe that's part of it. Is
oh, it is.
mostly my only
And
experience doing crowd work is on Zoom.
that's very good point, Tom. I get the impression that club owners like that because that makes the experience unique, and that's what people then enjoy, and they'll buy drinks and tell their friends.
Well,
Whereas then if
yeah.
you're doing a straightforward act, there's no variation. You're doing your act.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, you got to live with it, and so it compels you if you're doing a act, it's got to be strong and tight because you're
Mhm.
not going to vary from it much. I think of the classic comedians that just had a act, and that's what they did. I recall, like for example, like over the years, decades really, listening and watching to Emo Phillips is he doesn't do crowd work in the classic sense that you and I know. So when someone might heckle not heckle, but speak out, like kind of like shout stuff out. And Emo would gently couch it into, oh yeah, you're the guy that I found your head in a big bowl of coleslaw, and he'd move on. So in other words, is he'd acknowledge it, but he wasn't going to get engaging in the audience. Versus
Yeah.
on the other side of the spectrum, the usual kind of the person who likes to engage the audience. Hey, where are you from? Hey, wow, are
Mhm.
you two a couple? Or you're just screwing each other? That kind of thing. In
Yeah.
fact, I saw somebody doing that on a podcast. They go, "Oh, I miss comedy. I can't pick on people."
That's an
Well,
interesting
how
way to
about
look
that?
at
Maybe
it
you
for
should
sure.
write an act.
But well, on the other hand, though, I think that that's definitely at least one way that I'm trying to grow more through the virtual shows that we do is, how do
Yeah.
we then try and bridge that gap and engage the audience more? Because that tends to be one of the biggest things when it comes to, you know, are we getting people who are going to share the content, view it, and kind of get the word out? And the most effective way that I've seen people kind of do that is by engaging them directly.
Boy, that's a tough one, Tom. If you're successful at it, that's terrific because that's a challenge. It's a static medium. You've got the framework here, just like a TV camera, and you have limited engagement. You can watch a wall of faces on Zoom, or you could have people put things in on chat. But it's not as instantaneous in conversation and engagement as you would in a sea of live faces in front of a small room.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's two different mediums. That's
Mhm.
all it is.
No,
Yeah.
and it's definitely
So
like, how do we kind of make the interaction more instantaneous? Because, I mean, I think in general, unless the comics are also able to see like the chats going on, like they're not necessarily going to abandon doing their set in the middle of their act to kind of riff with the audience.
right. I there's been a couple of times I've seen that with Mike's the guys who run the Colorado comedy show, Mike Langworthy and Chuck Roy. They've got a level of success at it, but it's a given. They know that Mike might interject while someone's doing their thing,
Right.
and so there's a bit of a back and forth kibitzing. But I like your Mike and you and Brooksy is it would just be awkward. It's like, why are you interrupting me? Hey, I
Yeah.
only got 4 minutes. Why are you interrupting me?
Yeah, and that's a good point too. It's like, if you're we're just trying
Right.
to work on stuff, I don't want to have to
Oh yeah.
take my precious time with these short mics. I've also found that uh, the set lengths have just been super condensed in the virtual medium. Like, you're
Mm.
seeing
I
all
really
these
like it.
mics
Of
with
course.
like 3 minutes,
Yeah.
4 minutes,
Sure.
versus
Yeah.
like what people I guess are used to.
That's interesting, Tom. And of course, you've seen where I've done the public praise for the way you run the mic, you and Brooksy, I should say. And what I find is the folks who run the more open-ended mics, where they give unlimited time or 6, 7, 8 minutes, is that for people that are not familiar with doing good, crisp stand-up, it becomes indulgent. They ramble on with a story, or they talk about something cute. Where you're doing 4 minutes, and it's like that's it. You give them 30 seconds warning, 10 seconds warning, and they done. They get cut off. So it really compels you to be succinct and to the point and make things crisp. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. And I love it.
Well, it's interesting too, because I feel like part of that is because one of the first mics I went to, I don't think it's running anymore, but it was the hack seat open mic. It was like same
Uh-huh.
sort of setup where it was a firm 4 minutes. They also had a timer going, which was something that I found really
Okay.
helpful, so I wanted to emulate. But I was talking about with Lisa, I think the other day, my co-host for Too Funny Feedback. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting talking to her because I have some of an acting background, but she's kind of like the one who comes at it from a more professional view. And,
Right.
you talk about, or not you specifically, but one talks about kind of, you know, 3, 4 minutes not really being enough time for a set. And she's like, well, anytime I go into an audition for a comedy, it's like do your 90-second monologue, and then
Oh yeah.
like a completely different culture of performance where it's like, and then at second 91 we're gonna say thank you, and then throw your headshot and resume out because you went over time, so can't follow
Right.
directions. Like, just
Absolutely.
that ultra competitive, strict atmosphere. um,
Oh yeah, yeah. It makes it make compels you to be disciplined in delivering on time, which is what TV demands.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not
So,
that's right, I feel like
oh
that's a
no,
little,
right. You got a
yeah.
good point, Tom. There's no right or wrong to it. Rather, is that's the medium. If you want to be inside that medium. Now, for Joe and Jane road comic who want to pick on couples and ask them where they're from and are they sleeping together and kibitz with the entire audience from left to right, yeah, that's that medium as well. That doesn't translate to a TV special.
Not quite as much, no.
No, not as much.
No.
Cool, awesome. Um, so I looked at your website a little bit, and we
Oh
touched
yeah.
on a couple of your inspirations or your influences already, but some of the other ones you mentioned, Monty Python, also the original Second City cast, the Muppets. Um,
Right.
do you feel like there are specific qualities that you pull from those for your act, or are there any through lines that tie the caveman to the AI to the. I also want to hear just like the conspiracy theories of like all these characters exist in the same universe, like they do with like the Disney movies.
Well, in those cases, that what I've also enjoyed for all those examples you mentioned is the fact that it's just absurd and witty and well thought out. You know, the original Second City TV from I think it was like 1978 to 81. Harold Ramis was in the cast, and you could tell his bits. They were just there's a string of wittiness going through there. And when he was performing, as I shared earlier tonight, there was just this gleam in his eye. You knew that he was having a good time doing something. I think of one of their bits was Philosophy Street, and I know that Harold Ramis wrote this. So it's like Sesame Street, but they're all discussing things like existentialism, reality, fantasy, and it's
I
that's
would have
kind of
used
thing
that
that
in college.
yeah. So being stand up, you can't get too esoteric or deep because people won't get it. So, for example, if I can get away with like I'm working on Oog doing his St. Patty's Day special. And excuse me for a moment, what am I reaching for here if I can find it? Oh, where is it here? Oh, help me just to the point that I'm having a very erudite discussion and I can't find it. Where is it? What did he do with that? Well, so Oog pulls out his copy of James Joyce and starts reading it. So, that's the idea that it operates on two levels. Is there's the surface humor, which is what the where you have to go for stand up. But if anyone knows James Joyce, there's an underlying subtle humor to it. Shakespeare was very good at that. That he could do like a word play, which had a humorous level to it on the surface, but there's also a very coy double entendre underneath. And
Yeah.
when for the contemporary audience who got that, or for those of us who enjoy Shakespeare, is you really it's a real aha laugh. You're really laughing at the subtle undertone of the second joke behind it.
Right.
So those are the kind of things when you're asking what the thread is, that those are the kind of elements. Monty Python, the original Second City, Doonesbury, Gary Trudeau, is it? Yeah. The old Doonesbury was like that. There would be the four panels would have this visual cartoon to it, but there was something subtle in the little dialogue, and you'd laugh because he was doing a subtle dig underneath the surface humor.
Yeah. Those little details are always so interesting to like decode. Like with James Joyce, I remember having a discussion in one of my classes back in college or high school about what a rusty bicycle pump symbolized
Uh-huh.
in one of James Joyce's short stories. And I always think like I always appreciate a comedian who can come up with like a detail or a double entendre like that, where
Yeah.
you're like at home after the show in the shower and you're thinking about the show and you're like, oh,
Right,
you
right. That's
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're folks familiar with it, there's that's a classic dissertation of comedy is there's the ha ha humor and the aha humor. The
Oh,
ha ha humor is the Three Stooges. The aha humor is what you mentioned, Roz, is that little subtle wittism underneath, and you go, oh, and you're like,
And there's the third humor, which is just cringeworthy and
just
shock.
cringing.
Yeah.
well, I don't that counts. Although I've done some showcases with guys that do kind of that kind of classic Catskill type of shtick, the one-liner, two-liners. And when I'm
Yeah.
I find myself laughing is not as much as the shtick that if their one-liner lands, but it's this whole hey, how you doing? Hey, I was just crossing the street the other day. Hey, you know what I mean? My wife told me, hey, bada bing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm laughing at that. It's such a stereotype. It's great. But I haven't told you my favorite current Zoom stand-up comics.
Oh, do you want to tell us?
Oh, my favorite. There are a couple, and one of them, two of them are folks who are from Indian descent, and I would struggle with their names. Oh, maybe he's been on your mic as Ashwan. Has he been on your mic, Tom?
Oh, Ashwin.
Ashwin,
Chadha?
yeah, could be. He does this really acerbic, biting humor about modern society and how they view people of Indian descent, and it's great. I love it. I dig it every time he comes on.
Yeah, he's very funny.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one, and then this other guy, he may not have been on your mic, Randall Donovan.
Sorry, say the name again?
Randall Donovan.
Ooh. Donovan is one of
No, I
those
don't think
names where I feel like maybe it sounds kind of
no.
familiar. I don't
But
think so
he's
though.
I'm pretty sure he's in New York City, and he's revealed that he's in from the world of jazz. He does all these great brainy little nuggets and bits that I find great. He does this one bit that he talks about what if the Buddhists had stormed the Bastille,
Huh.
and I love it. And then one that I haven't seen in a while, and I can miss it so much is Darko the Clown.
Oh,
Okay,
that one I
you
do
haven't. I
not
definitely he
think
hasn't been
has
on
been
your
on my
show,
mic.
Tom.
Yeah.
Darko the Clown. It's a guy sitting on his couch. He's slumped on his couch with a Mexican wrestling mask,
Oh
and he
wow.
does non sequitur wordplay. He'll just come up with a premise and then just do this non sequitur pun about it. It's
Yeah, just kind of like
great.
humor on the
It
stand-up
makes no
genre.
sense, and I love it.
Just riff, yeah.
And I'm not quite. I get the sense that he's doing it on purpose. He knows what he's doing, but nobody laughs.
Well, it's
I'm on
probably
the
hard to
floor.
tell with the mask, to be fair.
Yeah, that's
Well, there's
true, I
that
guess.
thin line between absurdity and just unbridled goofiness.
That's good. Hopefully all of them will be on the mic at some point. Ashwin already has.
Yeah,
But yeah, okay. Well, we're kind of winding down with time though, so
sure.
we do also end the show the same way every week, which is by asking what's up next for you, and this is the
Right.
chance for you to plug your stuff, but also if you're
Oh,
willing
I
to
appreciate
tackle it,
that.
also like
Yeah,
what your longer term goals are in
sure.
regards to comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when the pandemic finally settles down, is for me to then start re-promoting the Geek Comedy Hour. And I've been doing that at performance spaces, coffee houses, art spaces, that kind of place where that kind of doing it. You might say a one-man show, although as I said, usually a host, or sometimes I'll invite another person with me as well. Uh, it's really I'm really up in the air about how much I can penetrate doing comedy clubs. I have found it's been appreciated that I am now getting invited in, or if I ask a submit, getting invited to comedy showcases.
Oh, that's
Albeit,
awesome.
as I was sharing with you, as I was sharing with you guys, I always seem to have that middle slot. So my goal is, how do I get to be a headliner? And I think that I have to just keep expanding some of the other things that I do. So it's clear that it's not just these 2 or 3 guys that I do. I only do those because it's only a 4 or 5 minute mic, but I can do other things as well. So that's really the short-term goals right now, heading into the summer of 2021 and into the fall. And yeah, eventually then would be great then to find a way then to then make a regular circuit or tour of either doing the geek comedy hour, doing comedy venues, or a blend of both.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
keep an eye out for that.
I'll just I'll put the cap on it then. The reason I bring back Oog and Bronco Brad a lot is because people enjoy it and they love it. And to me, that's the bread and butter.
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? Is I struggle with the bread and butter works great, but I don't want to get boxed into that. What do you call it? Stereotyped.
Yeah.
Like
Complacent.
Leonard
Yeah.
Nimoy could never break away from being Spock, no matter how hard he tried, because he was Spock.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's the same idea. You do you remember Ruth Buzzy?
Mhm.
No, I don't. But
Oh, okay.
Roz
Oh,
was
Ruth Buzzy
nodding.
doing
So
this big. Do Ruth Buzzy doing? I think it was Maud. Her character was Maud. She was dressed up in the frumpy outfit, and she did the Dean Martin roast a lot. It
okay.
was a singular character. Or how about Foster Brooks?
I mean, I get like what you're referencing, like when you get
So I'm going back to
kind of
ancient time.
stuck in a character that you're well known for portraying.
Yeah,
It's harder to
exactly.
think of you
Yeah.
outside that context. Yeah.
Pigeonholed, if you
Well, in
will.
other words,
There we
yeah,
go.
I
Yeah.
enjoy doing a lot of different type of comedy, so I don't want to just necessarily get pigeonholed. Maybe that's a good term for it. But
Yeah.
if you want to pay me for that pigeonhole, sure.
Hey.
If the money's right. Okay. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. So I just want to kind of take us out by saying thank you, Ed, for being such a
Thank you,
great
Yeah,
Ed.
thank
guest,
you.
hanging
Yeah,
out with
fun
us.
conversation.
Yeah, it was a good time. So you can find him on Facebook at ed_Smyth_comedy or at edsmythcomedy.com. Thank you, Roz, as always, for being a great co-host, and a big thanks to you, our audience, for watching the program. If you enjoyed the stream, please consider making a donation or following us on social media. You can find the links to those in the episode description. And tune in next week as we interview Chicago-based comic Tyler Fowler. So that'll be a fun episode, I'm sure. But that's it for us tonight. Have a good night. Bye.